Everybody, this is Grace, and I have I'm going to ask all of you if you've experienced this lately, much more recently, like maybe the past few years, and especially recently, of when you ask somebody over the phone a very direct question, and they go off on start answering it when it's not at all connected to what you ask. Now, I know this has been going on for years. I've seen it for years, but not very often until more recently. And I know some say, well, the way you do videos, maybe you're not being clear. No, what I've learned because of those experiences, I'm talking about like 10, 15 years ago, that when I call, I'll make really short sentences, something like, I do not want to do this online. Could you give me a different way to do it? Yeah, this just happened to me a little while ago, and it was a bank, and I called the bank and said, this is what I said: I haven't received a statement recently, and I want to check my balance, but I do not want to do it online. I do not do any banking online. Now that's very clear. I can't imagine being any more clear than that. So, and the guy answered me, if you want to change your status, you need to get online. Did you hear any problem with that? Did I say anything about changing my status? No. Didn't I say I do not do anything online? I do not do any banking online. Yeah. So he started going on with some crazy stuff, and I said, something that was not at all connected, and I said, no, excuse me, but this is what I need. This is the help I need. And I said that same thing, very straight, very clear. This is Texas. I'm Texan. He's Texan, apparently, I would think, or maybe not. Yeah. But anyway, he started talking to me about. He says, "Well, I need to explain to you." Oh, this kind of attitude. And I said, "No, listen. You need to be quiet and listen to what the customer is asking." And so I told him again. He started doing this thing. I said, "What is your?" I said, "What's the corporate office's phone number? I'm going to call them." And he gave it to me. He started saying it real fast, like that. And I'm like, "No, I am writing it down, so you need to go slower." I'm very clear. So he gave me he just sat there, didn't say anything. And I said, the phone number is 800. And I'd already written down the first three numbers, so I said them real slow. By this time, I was pretty miffed. And so then he gave me the rest of the number. And then he started saying, I was trying to explain to you how to change your status. I said, I think I'd already gotten his name. I said, I want to speak to your manager right now. I'd already told him I've been banking there since many years ago, okay, many years ago, that chain. And anyway, so I said, I want to speak to your manager right now. He sounded like a very young man, very young. And he said, I am the manager. I said, you are the manager. So when I call the corporate office, this is going to be really good. And I hung up. I was like, oh my goodness. And the story doesn't end there, though. And see, I got kind of worried when I said, when that kind of lack of professionalism at a bank, that kind of attitude, not listening, talking over, just answering something that I had specifically said, I do not do any banking online, and he's going to tell me how to do it online. Yeah. So anyway, so I called the 800 number, and there was a young man answered it, and I wasn't even sure. I should have just checked online to make sure that phone number was the right phone number for them. And I called, and a young man answered, and I told him the story. And as soon as I told him the story, I told him the problem that I had, and he kept asking for my name and my account number, and I wasn't going to give it to him because I hadn't checked it yet. And so I told him my story, everything I just said. Okay, and what did he say? Well, you can get online. Really? I'm like, oh my goodness. I said, how am I not making this clear? I do not do any banking online. Oh, okay. I think beyond the point, beyond just not having I think that they do a lot of stuff online, and they're so used to doing everything online. It's like, that's just how it is. Everything's done online. What do you mean, phone number? Yeah, and just have poor listening skills. Now, if you're working in something where you're answering the phone, you should have much better listening skills. You don't, I saw this, first time I ever remember seeing this was probably back in, I'm thinking like around 2004 or something. It was a mom and her daughter, and her daughter was my age, okay, and they worked for a doctor's office. And like I said, that was the first time I've ever heard it in my life, okay, really, seriously. Seen something, heard and seen them behaving the way they would behave. And so, never, ever, it was so extremely frustrating, is that I would say one thing and they would answer a question I didn't ask. I mean, you ask, can I make an appointment for this day? And they answer, well, you need to get your prescriptions renewed. You need to, and I said, I'm not, or maybe that's not even a good example, because they could say that. But it would be an answer to something that I hadn't even asked. Like I'm saying, it was some other kind of weirdness there. Anyway, I don't know if I can explain. One time, and finally, the woman that was my age, the daughter that was my age, I said, I want to speak to the doctor. I said, if you're going to have this much trouble understanding what I am saying, I want to speak to the doctor directly. And she laughed. Seriously, it laughed like a little sinister laugh. And she said, no, I got it. I got it. They got fired, both of them. And I'm guessing they did that to a lot of people. But it was like they purposefully got things confused and to upset people. Now, there are people out there in this world that enjoyed that kind of thing. So, anyway, but that was just too much today. Okay, so I haven't finished the story, though. Just this story, okay? So, so I hung up, and I looked it up online, and it was the right phone number to call. I don't trust it, and I wanted them to know. Well, that man the man that answered, the young man, when I called to the corporate office number, he wanted, he said that he was going to connect me to a manager. Well, I didn't want that, so I hung up and called, like I said, looked it up and called back and got this young woman. Why are they all young? Do people my age don't want to work in those places? But anyway, so I told her the story, and she said, well, right now we don't have any managers available. Why aren't managers never available? So I said, well, I said, can you write this comment on my account? She said, yes, ma'am, I can write anything on your account. I said, I want you to write this. I gave her the name and the address and of this manager. He must have been maybe in his 20s, okay, maybe. And his voice and his attitude, so young. And I said, and I told her the whole story, and she wrote it down. She didn't go and say, well, you can go online. At least she didn't do that. I think I would have just, that would have been it. I would have changed banks after all this time, since the 1990s. I've been banking since there's, that chain since the 1990s. So I would have said, forget it. These people, I don't trust them with my money, But that was after something else that happened. And that one is, see, this one was frustrating, not angry, made me a little miffed. One of those bad ones. Now, how about one that wasn't that wasn't bad, really? It's just that I finally found out something that was bad, how it worked out. Okay. And yeah, telling this story, I can see I'm a little bit hyped up about this, because it was these two things back to back. So I'm probably not making much sense as it is. But like I said, I say, when I call these places, I make sure I keep my sentences really short, and like 3 sentences to say everything I need, So here's this one. I do order my medications online, not on the computer, on my phone app, okay, and order them to be delivered. And that's what I think a lot of people are doing. I had just signed up for it right before this pandemic and all. I don't know how many months before, but anyway. it always had problems. It was new. It had problems from the start. Oh my goodness, unbelievable. It is not very clear cut. And then the way that the pharmacies will put in their, like, renew, the prescription renewals. They might have one left from before, like a 1 month supply. They put the other ones that's kind of like hidden behind it, so you're only going to see the one. Oh my goodness. And they want you to have all your prescriptions done 90-day supplies. I don't trust that anymore. I will not. I only do 30-day supplies because they've messed up so many times. Not just that one. So many chains. I changed chains for pharmacies because of this, that they would screw up and they'd give me the like the wrong brand. And I'm a highly sensitive person, and certain brands will cause me problems. So that I have to have a certain brand on my medications. Okay. Anyway, I had called the doctor's office yesterday, the day before, whenever it was, and they've been doing their consultations, instead of in office. They're not taking any patient in office, because of this. And they've been doing it the last couple months or so. Anyway, I called to see when was the last time I did it, and I need to see about getting more prescriptions. And I checked my app and told them all that about, which ones I needed and everything. And she said she'd call me back. She had to talk to the provider. And, it's actually the, whichever one's going to be there, the doctor or the nurse. And she never did. She never called me back. And that was, it was it. She said, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and she said she'd call me back that day. She didn't. Okay. And now, today, she still hadn't. So I called back. And it was a different woman, okay? And I told her. And yeah, very, like, little bitty sentences. I don't get confused. And basically, she did. But then she, I asked her, I said, well, what will happen if I have to do my, my blood test? And they had told me before that they send them to a certain lab that's very popular, very well known. And I said, well, how exactly does that work? I want to hear what they say. And she said, I had called the labs before and asked them how it worked. Well, she said it's a first come, first serve now. And I said, really? I said, that doesn't sound good. And, I explained to her that, yeah, I don't want to go into a lab where just people come in whenever and, what's going on, and people are there for a reason to take the labs. And, yeah, and she said, yeah, I understand. Okay, so that worried me. So I tried once again to call a doctor that I had seen. I saw both of the doctors from that practice. It was only 2 doctors. And I'd only seen each one once. And I'd had enough of the place, but the first time the doctor seemed very, like, sly. And I have a reason for saying that. Yeah, I do. And then the next time I saw the woman there, and she and her staff, they were so rude. They were like mean girls. Seriously, mean girls. And there were things that they were doing. I had worked in healthcare before, and I knew that it was not right what they did. And I told them, yeah, what I saw, and they said, oh, that's okay. I said, no, it's not. But anyway, or I didn't say this. No, it's not. I just, And anyway, I knew that they were wrong. They were very wrong. And they also they took my, drew blood and busted my vein, and it was bruised and all, that kind of hemorrhage, I think they call it. But anyway, whatever it's called. Anyway, and I had to go back, and the doctor had to check it out because it was really bad. It was. Now, well, the next time I saw the male doctor that time. The next time, only twice. The second time was to see the woman, and she was the mean girl kind of type. And I also had an eye hemorrhage. Yeah, and I never had one before, and so I told her about that, and I needed to renew my prescriptions. Well, she charged me for 2 doctor's visits, one for the eye and one for the renewal of the medications. Yes. One of my sisters is a medical billing auditor. I didn't tell her, but I have never known in my entire life a doctor that's going to charge you 2 visits because you have more than one thing going on. A renewal of prescriptions. Yeah, it's going to be a second visit. And I don't have health insurance, so they weren't taking insurance at that time. So yeah, you kind of start to wonder, well, now I understand why they don't take health insurance. Yeah, I could go down the line on that, but this is just be my suspicions, and I could be wrong. And I'm not going to name the name of the place, so. Okay, anyway. Oh my goodness, I just messed up there. I'm still getting used to this again. But, being on camera and using the camera and staring at that little button. But, so anyway, so I called this woman, I called that place. I found the place. And, again, I wanted to see how they did theirs, okay? And if it was, I had tried before, I don't know, I wanted to ask them about how long I've been taking vitamin D. And the guy who answered was a young man, and he had said, I said, well, are you at this address and all this? And he said, no. He said, and I think that what he said was they were bought out, and it had a new name now, and that they didn't have me on their system. Well, I tried again to call it, and I looked it up again, and it said the address, and the map came up. I said, okay, this time they're not going to tell me that. So I called, and it was a young woman. And she said, ma'am, you're not on our system. And I was like, really? I said, I told her the story, and I looked it up, and I said, it's telling me that address, okay? And I said, I know that that's where it is. And I asked her for the street address. I said it more than once, and she never acknowledged that it was it. I said, for the crossroads. Well, she gave me, instead of the crossroads, she gave me a parallel street. I said, is it right near a railroad track? And she said, no, I don't think there is. There is a railroad track. And finally I said, what is your street address? And she told me the street address, and she named the name that I had been saying 2 or 3 times. I'm like, okay, I don't know. When you say something, when you say it's on this street, and they're saying, well, then they give you a parallel street. I said, where are you located? She gives me a parallel street. It's not by a railroad track. If the railroad track is right there, I don't know how she'd miss a railroad track. But, and I said, and I would say the crossroads, on either side. Well, I said one of them, and it's a major crossroad, and she had never heard of it. If you're going to be answering a phone and possibly giving directions, you need to know where you are. Okay. Anyways, turns out that that practice was bought out. Yeah. And the way she said it, apparently she had worked there when they were, the way she said what she said. She's been working there for a while, because I told her the story about how they charged me and all that. And she said, we don't do that anymore. So she must have been, she could have been, I don't know, with all of me asking her about the address, where they're located. Aren't you next to this and that? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a different way of asking or answering or thinking. Then maybe it's the difference in, I don't know. I don't want to say that, but really, I mean, they got to drive there. They have to be looking at something else, the road and everything, see a railroad track. Don't know. Okay, speaking of track, I kind of got off track there whenever I messed up on my phone. So I might have repeated myself on some of it and left some of it out. But basically, when I started asking her, I asked her about what do they do. I said, since you don't, she said, they no longer have me on the records. They were bought out sometime at the end of last year. So they switched. They have a different name, and that they don't have access to the other doctors, other 2 doctors. They're, they're patients from them. They don't have access to that, so they don't have me in the system. And I said, okay, well, how would I go about making an appointment, because I want to renew my prescriptions, and how does that work with their lab and all that? So I asked all these questions. And basically, they're only doing them over the phone. She said that, a nurse would call me, contact me, talk to me, and maybe I would talk to the doctor. And if I needed labs, that I would go into their office, okay? Not go to one of these big labs, but I would go into their office, and that's what I did before, and they would take my blood there. I said, and I asked about what are they doing for the safety of the patients, and with COVID-19 going around, and now I said, how safe is it? And she talked to me, she said they don't allow patients in that have those symptoms. I said, well, they can be asymptomatic, Yeah. That's the second one that I've said it to. The other one I mentioned, I told them that, and the next thing I know, they started doing them over the phone. But they were having patients, the other one I spoke of, not this practice here, the first one I mentioned, they, she said, well, we don't take patients who have any symptoms, and I said, they can be asymptomatic. And she said, oh, really? And the next thing I knew, like I said, they no longer did it, and she was very thankful to me when I called back the next time. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need new doctors. Okay, but anyway, so this one, still, they're not sending me to a lab. They take appointments, that you come in, and they're, masks are mandatory. You have to wear a mask to go there. That's good. And, so they do them there, and nobody else, no other patients going to be around. And so that was something good. In case this other one tries to tell me to go to a different lab and take them there. They always had done them in their office, but they're not doing that. And I'm not going to do that. That's risky. That is way risky. Because like I told that first woman, I said, they're taking labs for a reason. Okay, and I don't just first come, first serve. Everybody walks in and everybody can be there. They could be real busy. But when I had called them before and asked myself, they didn't say that. They said that they limit the amount of people there. I said there still could be somebody sitting in there. You're saying that there still can be somebody sitting in the waiting room with you, and still, the whole thought to me is just, it's just not good, because But anyway, I think I've told enough of these stories, and I think it's long enough. But what about all of you? I mean, do you have these kinds of problems? And have you learned to use very short sentences? I want X, Y, Z. I do not want A, B, C. And speak really slow, especially if the first time they screw it all up and you have to repeat it. And I think I've done a video on this before. This kind of thing. I really appreciate the healthcare professionals and providers now, with COVID-19 going around and all that, and how they're having to change and all that. But things need to make sense. And I understand that people working right now, they're very stressed out and all that, but you need to listen. Things could go faster if you just sit to listen. And like I'm saying it very clear. I want X, Y, Z. I do not want A, B, C. So there's not that much difficulty. And I had a video I made. I don't know if I'm going to make it public because I didn't want to say anything negative about healthcare professionals or people who are out there working, because I do appreciate them. But it is stressful to me, too. Okay, and I really appreciate what they do. I really do. So it's stressful on a lot of people, and I understand their situation's a lot different, but these are people who are not working with anybody else. Okay, the ones I spoke of, they're not, as far as I know. Their doors are not open for the doctor's offices. No, like she said, only one of them allows people to come in to take tests, and then they're wearing masks. And the bank, from what I understand, is it's only one person there. Okay, and they don't allow people in. So, you see what I'm saying. Anyway, I'm wrapping this up. But what about you? How do you see it?